Did you know that there was a certain interval that was very relevant to creating tension, creating unpredictability, creating instability, to create an environment in your musical discourse which would help you to create modulation? Yes, there's one interval that is very interesting for this role, and I'm talking about the diminished fifth. This interval is also known as the devil's interval. It sounds super evil. This is a piece by the Canadian rock band Rush. So yes, this interval was referred to as the devil's interval in the medieval and Renaissance periods because it was very dissonant according to the system that was being developed back then. The sound was inherently unstable, demanding a certain form of resolution. This idea of developing a resolution was much more used in the Renaissance period. When you add a counterpoint that would lead to a diminished fifth, let's say we go from an octave, that's two A's, going down onto a diminished fifth, we would need a resolution. One note would go up and one note would go down. So it made it less desirable in that period as people were looking for more smooth and consonant harmonies. But then in the Baroque period, some people like Johann Sebastian Bach were starting to use it more and more and to really implement it into the tonal discourse that became very much favored in the classical period. So the diminished fifth, also called the augmented fourth, it's actually the same thing, but also called the tritone, became a very important interval after Bach. If you pay attention in any Bach prelude or fugue, there's always a moment towards the end of the piece where the music stops, and it always stops on a tritone. Actually, not just a tritone, but a diminished chord, which includes a bunch of tritones. So that's four different notes: F sharp, A, C, and E flat. And all of these four notes wants to resolve into a cadence of whatever tone the piece was in. So that meant that when you have the diminished chord like this, you have this one wants to go here, 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 creating everything is going somewhere, wants to go somewhere. So you see dissonance and consonance. This made this interval and this specific chord, the diminished chord, which was really the greatest representant of the tritone. This really made it an interesting tool for composers afterwards to create a certain direction in the music or a certain openness. It's kind of a question mark you add in your piece. It's like, where are we now? Oh, we're here. So Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven always had these conclusion, well, at the end of the pieces at least. But later, and that's where it gets interesting for modern and contemporary composers, these chords were used to create very far away modulations. Because if you're in a certain tone, let's say D major, but then you add in a diminished chord, you want to go somewhere, right? You can't just come back. You want to go somewhere else. I just modulated from D major to A minor, which is kind of a neighboring tone, but still it's quite different, right? So let's say now I'm in A minor. I just modulated again in D minor. I just modulated again in E minor. And now I'm back in D major. So every time I use a tritone, it's a great way to create direction in the music. But now in the Romantic period, as more and more composers were experimented with the tritone, we got even weirder modulations. So D major, same diminished chord. I just modulated in C minor. That's not very much a neighboring tonality. But how did I do that? And how are people like Mahler doing this? Mahler just keeps modulating in this chord progression that's from his Ninth Symphony. And he's using tritones to create this sense of the music going somewhere. And he's surprising us each time with the resolution. So how can you surprise people with the resolution? Well, if you take any diminished chord, that's from C, D sharp, F sharp, A. Well, the idea is that normally, if you have this chord in the context of, let's say, G minor, well, you treat it as a dominant chord. It's like a fifth degree and you want to go back on the first degree, which is the G minor. And why is it? Is because every note has its role. This one is the leading tone, that's the F sharp, going to the G. The A wants to go either on the G or on the B flat. The C wants to go on the B flat, and the E flat wants to go onto the E. They all want to go somewhere, and they all related to a certain degree of your mode or your tonality. So in this diminished chord, C, E flat, F sharp, A, in G minor, the C is the 4th degree, then we have 6th degree, then we have 7th here, then we have 2nd degree here. Well, let's say you have these 4, 6, 7, 2. Let's say we just change. Instead of the C being the 4th, it's going to be the 6th. This is going to be the 7th. This is going to be 2nd, and this is going to be the 4th. Then it means this one's going to be here, this one's here, this one here, and this one. This means we just landed in E minor. So we modulated from G minor, C diminished, into E minor. You see what I mean? And what if we take again, still in G minor? So this is 4, 6, 7, 2. But then this could be 7, 2, 4, 6. This will lead us to C sharp minor, because the 7 would be going up. And what if we do the last option? This would then be 2, 4, 6, 7. We just landed on the B flat minor. So this means that we can either modulate to B flat minor, C sharp minor, E minor, and that's just the minor versions. You can also go into these root notes, but with major chords. E major, B flat major. That's B flat major. That's even more possibilities. But the very nice guy like Richard Wagner actually was just the worst. People hated him. Had this idea of, yes, falling on one of these different tones, but making them also a dominant chord. G minor, C diminished, and then you have E major 7. So we're still want to go somewhere, right? So we create this music that would just constantly lead from a diminished chord to another, a dominant chord to another. And Wagner even added some different colors, like the minor 7 flat 5 chord, which is actually a minor chord at first with the 7th. That's F minor 7. But then the 5th, you drop it down to a diminished 5th. Create this very strange chord. And he would use the same idea that I presented you with the diminished chord. All of these notes could be leading somewhere. And since this chord was a little bit different than the diminished chord, you'd add a little bit more flexibility. You could lead it back to a diminished chord. Wagner used this chord and this specifically variation of the diminished chord to have us wonder where we are and where we're going all the time for 4 hours in an opera. So using the diminished fifth and precisely the diminished chords or the dominant chord, and knowing where you can use it and especially where it can lead you, can really help you to create a more colorful musical discourse and maybe justify some modulations with non-neighboring tonalities. This is something I use a lot when I'm composing and when I'm looking to add some color and direction to my music. If you're interested to know more and to see me in action where I compose a chord progression from scratch, I invite you to go see this next video.